Jalen Ramsey, gone. Jonnu Smith, gone. Minkah Fitzpatrick, welcome back.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. My head is on a swivel. I got the notifications for the insiders. Every 30 minutes, there's some new detail. This blockbuster deal is done. The Dolphins have traded Jalen Ramsey. So my condolences to the make it work out with your toxic ex party. It's not happening. But this deal has a number of significant layers interwoven on top of each other in something that comes across as more of an NBA trade than any NBA trade that I can remember seeing in the last few years. I mean, the layers here are insane. It gets dropped a couple hours ago, and I waited because I wanted to get as many of the finer details as I possibly could. Jalen Ramsey being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. Wonder what we got. Oh, Jalen Ramsey's getting a pay raise and going to Pittsburgh. Oh, okay. It is what it is. I'm not surprised. 3 raises in 3 years for Jalen. What are they getting back? Minkah Fitzpatrick coming back as a part of the deal. It's a player-for-player swap. You say, wow, that's really rare. The irony there is incredible. You've traded a disgruntled Miami Dolphins defensive back for a former disgruntled Miami Dolphins defensive back. Then Jonnu Smith is announced to be a part of a trade with a pick swap with Pittsburgh. And then it, lo and behold, is all of these things in one massive asteroid of a rock that was thrown at the NFL world on Monday, June 30th. So the full terms of the trade are as such. The Dolphins are trading Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 7th-round draft choice. And in return are bringing back safety Minkah Fitzpatrick. Sounds familiar. And a 2027 5th-round draft choice. So you can, however you want to rebundle the assets, if it's Ramsey for Minkah, straight up flip, and then Jonnu and a 7 for a 5, or however you want to do the mental gymnastics in your head. What it really boils down to is this. For Pittsburgh, it's pretty straightforward, right? Y'all are all in, right? Black and yellow is gas pedal to the floor with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and trading for DK Metcalf and now acquiring Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey in one fell swoop. For Miami, it's the latest affirmation in my mind of how the Dolphins have gone about their business this offseason. Everything that they've done, they're giving themselves the opportunity to compete. But in the grand scheme of things, they're playing the long and the short game simultaneously. So the return of Minkah Fitzpatrick, and we're going to talk about Minkah and his role here in this Dolphins secondary, gives you a chance to compete in the here and now. But the financial implications of the trade is where the Dolphins are playing the long game. They're pooling assets. They're choosing not to pay late-stage players big-time money. And Jonnu Smith got a pay raise today, by the way. He went from making $4 million to $12 million on his 1 year left on his contract. So Pittsburgh gave him $12 million. And Jonnu was scheduled to make just over $4 in Miami this year. So that's another part of this, right? There's another layer to this potpourri of team building ideologies all happening at the same time. The Dolphins paid $3 million of Jalen Ramsey's salary. So the $21.5 million, he ends up getting a raise to 26.6 is the new compensation for Jalen Ramsey. Miami is paying $3 million of his outstanding balance to facilitate the trade. That's half of what I thought they were going to trade in a vacuum of Ramsey of a pick, right? And they bring back Minkah Fitzpatrick at 15.5. But they offload the 21 that was scheduled for Jalen Ramsey. The 4 that was scheduled for Jonnu Smith is 25 minus $3 million that they have to pay is 22. I'm not a math guy, but I can pull that one off. So 22, and they're bringing back, and 22 and change, and they're bringing back 15.5. So the Dolphins, from a cash spend perspective, are saving about $7 million in cash. What do you do with that $7 million? I would assume you're looking at veteran cornerbacks now. It's been reported, I believe Omar Kelly's reported, the Dolphins are calling around about tight ends, looking for another trade opportunity. I'm sure by the time I hit publish on this show, there's going to be another transaction elsewhere, because that's how it happens in Miami land, right? I remember when they moved from 3 to 12 and back to 6, and what a day that was. If I would not at all be surprised if this ends up being another experience like that, and there's a couple of shoes that fall shortly after. But at least now the Dolphins have the clarity on the financing element of this, what they're saving. $7 million in cash. So they offload Jalen, they offload Jonnu, they pay $3 million of Jalen's salary. So those two guys combined, there's still a savings. And then you bring back Minkah Fitzpatrick to fill what's going to be presumably a pretty big role in your secondary. So that's all the parts from an asset perspective. There's a Jonnu Smith conversation about what tight end looks like. We don't know it. There's a cornerback room question. We don't know what that's going to look like, because they've been interested in acquiring players at that position. The only position room that I can talk about with confidence right now is the safety room, because we know the player that's coming back in Minkah Fitzpatrick. We're going to talk about him and how he fits with the other guys in the room, how he fits within the secondary, that. And then we heard from a former Miami Dolphin, Raheem Mostert, who had some interesting things to say about the Dolphins trading their lone Pro Bowler from last year. And Raheem making that moment in time about him and his experience in Miami. We're going to talk on that too, because I think there's some important clarifications there. So that's all coming your way next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And, for me, it was getting a chance to sit down and look at all of the individual transactions and all of the little things that could be tweaked that helped me build a better plan to save each and every month. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. What I wish I could put into words the fever dream that was this morning from a sitting down, planning your day, have a whole bunch of stuff planned for Monday content, big day of the week, high traffic day, to the first shoe dropping, and then the second shoe dropping, and then the third shoe dropping. And it was enough to make your head spin. If you lived it in real time on the timeline, I'm sure you felt the same way. If you're only catching up and you're hearing what I have to say, God bless. I hope I can do the justice that you need. But let's talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick as the player that's coming back. And the poetry here is just incredible, right? This is Minkah Fitzpatrick. This was a guy who spurned the Dolphins in year one of a rebuild, as he didn't like the plan for his utilization, and you could tell there was some concerns about the competitive direction of the football team. And Minkah gets traded for a first-round draft choice in 2020 that ended up being the 18th overall pick, and now he's back. And I think when you look at what the Dolphins have in their secondary, when you consider Ife Melifonwu, what he's capable of, you also look at Ashton Davis as a high post type player. You look at the young guys, the Dante Traders and the Patrick McMorrises of the world. You had a lot of guys, and Ashton Davis is a guy who can play high in the post. Minkah, in the same way that Melifonwu has versatility from a coverage implementation standpoint, Minkah Fitzpatrick, from a coverage standpoint, is a very diverse player. Now, I think there's going to be a fine line to walk between weaponizing him in a way in which he wants to be used. Remember, he didn't like how the Dolphins wanted to use him in 2019, but then he went to Pittsburgh, and he didn't like the way the Pittsburgh used him because they left him too high and away from the football. He wanted to be close to the football. So this is, from a coverage perspective, I think a defensive weapon. Now, the tackling elements for Minkah, I think, is where you have some concerns about how consistent he is. And I think that's a blockade potentially from playing him low in support. There's been years where there's been double-digit missed tackle rates. In 2021, it was 12% missed tackle rate. It's been better in recent years, but I also think the way that Minkah has been used, he's kind of fallen into a happy medium from an implementation standpoint. The ball production's also been down. He has one interception in the last 2 seasons, Minkah does, but he played all 17 games last year. He is coming off a year in which he played 1,083 snaps. He missed 7 games in 2023, but it's been 939 or more snaps in every other year since. So this has been a pretty durable player. He's 28 years old. He's going to turn 29 in November. He's due 15.5 this year and then more in 2026, but it's not guaranteed salary. So they're going to have a chance to see how it works with Minkah, and then you have an opportunity to potentially do a contract extension if things go well. And if things don't go well, there's an exit strategy, which you did not really have with the Jalen Ramsey contract, other than to get out of the deal, right, that you gave him. And he, in the process, got himself a fresh raise. But for Minkah, Melifonwu, I think, is still your roam, box, low, hybrid linebacker, run support player. Minkah and Ashton Davis, I think, can both play high post. When you go 2 safeties, I think it's probably Minkah and Melifonwu are the 2 best players that you have, and Ashton Davis is the backup player to Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then you have these other less established guys who can come in and be a 3rd or 4th safety. You know, we'll see what happens between Elijah Campbell and Trader and McMorris and how that room shakes itself out. That's going to be a tough room to make a cut on because you probably look at that group and say, we probably have 6 we'd like to have. And now you have the ceiling player. And I remember we're going back to the draft and pre-draft process, and we're having conversations about Nick Eamon-Warry. We're having conversations about Malachi Starks. And the conversation is, if you could bump everybody else in the safety room down 1 spot, I'd really like what you have to offer. And they managed to achieve that as a part of this Jalen Ramsey offload. Now, there's other moving parts. There's other position rooms that have to be settled. Corner has to be settled. Tight end has to be settled. But knowing that it's Minkah, Iffy, Ashton Davis, one of your young guys, presumably in front of Elijah Campbell. And if it was me, I keep both the young guys, and I would have Campbell be the cap casualty. You know, he's not really a big cap guy, but he's going to be 30 years old this year. He's played like 200 defensive snaps. That room, you can go win some battles with. And then you look at the depth of the linebacker room. And I think that's where they've addressed the entirety of the spine of this defense with what they did with the investments and the body types and the styles of the defensive tackles in the middle. You got healthy on the edge, and how long they stay healthy is an interesting conversation, right? But they addressed the spine because they went there. They got different depth players that are skill-specific players in KJ Britt and Willie Gay to be the backup linebacker types. And now they've completely gutted the safety room, and they just got the staple player. I think it's really fascinating how it all works out. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that anything's going to happen, good, bad, or otherwise. But I see the vision here. I see the vision of what they're trying to achieve. And you took this bad situation that you put yourself in, right? And I think that's worth noting too, is the Dolphins did this to themselves with choosing to trade for Jalen Ramsey, choosing to give Jalen Ramsey contract 1, choosing to let Jalen Ramsey put your feet to the fire and give him contract 2, and then have whatever's happened this offseason, good, bad, and ugly behind the scenes has happened, right? My phone's blown up. Let me make sure this isn't another freaking trade. It's not a trade, at least yet. We'll see. We got another couple minutes left in the show. I think Minkah gives you slot flexibility that you also have with Ife Melifonwu. There's coverage appeal. This is not the player that I want to live down in the box, but between the young guys that you have, Melifonwu, the linebackers, I think we can make this work, but it's dependent upon everything gelling. It's dependent on your young guys or your edge guys staying healthy, and it's dependent on what you add to the cornerback room. And now at least the first domino has fallen. You know what kind of cash budget you have because you know what you're saving. So we'll see. We'll see how quickly the next shoe drops, including the Dolphins reportedly exploring trades for a tight end to replace Jonnu Smith in that room. But a former Dolphin, Raheem Mostert, shared some thoughts on social media about this trade and how the Dolphins treat their players. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. So Raheem Mostert threw a grenade at the Dolphins. The whole football world is reacting to this deal. And it's worth remembering from Jonnu Smith's perspective, he preferred to stay in Miami. But Pittsburgh's willing to give you $12 million on it, and your salary this year is $4 million. Right? You get that kind of raise. Like, I'm happy for Jonnu to get the compensation off the year that he had, and he's going to have a chance with an offensive coordinator that knows him well to double down on it and then go out and take advantage of it. But for Miami, they're leveraging, optimizing the next build and prioritizing the primary pillar pieces and not making overt commitments. And they very clearly were not willing to go to the dollar amount that the Pittsburgh Steelers were as far as Jonnu Smith. And Pittsburgh's kind of all in. So you say, okay, go for it. Raheem Mostert said, hot take, be a Pro Bowler on the Dolphins. This is on Twitter. Hot take, be a Pro Bowler on the Dolphins, get treated like expletive. Happy for my guys, though. Go ball out. So Raheem very clearly feels some type of way about his tenure in Miami. And of course, he was put on the back burner. He had 30 carries in the final 9 games. He got hurt week 1, had 49 carries in the first 4 games back. But let's not forget what happened in those 4 games back. Raheem claims he was treated like expletive. This is a family-friendly show. And when he came back, he had an opportunity to get double-digit carries in 3 out of 4 games, including some of those happening without Tua Tagovailoa. Raheem Mostert fumbled in the second half of 2 football games that the Dolphins lost, that they were winning at halftime and winning when the Dolphins had the ball in the second half. Week 7, week 9. Week 7 against the Colts, the Dolphins are up 10-3. They are in possession of the ball. Raheem Mostert fumbles The Colts take over at the Dolphins 20-something yard line, 28-yard line. And within 5 plays, they are in the end zone. They've tied the game. You lose the game 16-10. You win this game if you don't give the Colts a short field. It's a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda. There's a lot of other things that happened between the point of the fumble and when the game hit triple zeros and you lost the football game. But the Dolphins had the football, winning by a touchdown the second half. Raheem put it on the turf inside his own 40-yard line. Colts score a touchdown on the ensuing possession. Game is tied. They go on to lose a football game. 2 weeks later, you play Arizona, then you play Buffalo. You're winning 10-6 at halftime in Buffalo. You get the ball to start the second half, and you go like 30 yards down the field in like 3 plays. Raheem Mostert fumbles. The Bills recover. The Bills take possession of the ball, go right down the field, score touchdown, take the lead. Bills won that game by 3 points. From that game onward, and remember, since he came back from the injury, he had 49 carries in 4 games. It was an average of more than 12 carries a game. He had 30 carries in 9 games the rest of the way. And you mean to tell me, Raheem, after you rewrote the record book for single-season touchdowns and made the Pro Bowl, and the Dolphins gave you a contract extension with a cash pay raise, and then you came in and got hurt and came back and fumbled twice in games that the Dolphins lost in second half when they were winning, and had your role reduced in favor of Devon Achane, simultaneously with the offensive line had no push to be able to run the ball, so they wanted the passing threat on the field at the same time so that they could try to put some semblance of a balanced offense out there and present a threat of run and pass simultaneously. And then you got cut after that season happened with 2 back-breaking fumbles and an injury in your age. How old's Raheem Mostert? How old was Raheem Mostert? In your age 32 season as a running back with durability issues, you felt you got treated like expletive, that you wanted to draw the parallel to what happened with Jonnu, where Jonnu rewrote the record book and in 1 year with the team and came back and wanted a new deal, and the Dolphins didn't want to pay him what Pittsburgh was willing to pay him, so they traded him. That don't pass a sniff test to me. But I am glad that as more time continues to pass, you can continue to see just some of the glimpses of just how deeply sown the 2024 Dolphins toxicity lied. Because the Dolphins did everything to do right by Raheem Mostert by giving him the contract extension and rewarding him. They very easily could have said, that's great, you had a record-setting season, but you're age 32 running back. You're under contract this year. Why don't you just play on the last year of your deal? They didn't do that. They took care of Raheem. And then Raheem gets hurt and has fumble issues in the first half of the season. He gets phased out the second half. And it's the Dolphins' fault? Listen, like, the Dolphins have plenty of their own missteps. And I don't think anything that they did by Raheem Mostert was indicative of a team, treating their player like crap. So that one doesn't check out to me. But we just got another example of how the disease of me, to quote, Pat Riley, and you hear Nick Saban talk, the disease of me. The 2024 Dolphins were infected with the disease of me, and you just got the latest example of it in the aftermath of a trade in which the Dolphins sold high on an age 30 tight end, or soon to be age 30 tight end, and avoided not paying him $12 million a season after having a career year in 2024. So if you're watching on YouTube, the right-hand third says, what just happened? That, my friends, is what just happened. We'll see what else we get. Keep it locked in right here, Locked On Dolphins. Your team every day. That's going to do it for me here. I am out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back to talk to you all again soon. Go Fins.